Hi everyone, it's Sandra, and today I want to feed Cinderella this adorable pumpkin. I think she deserves a pumpkin coach. But I want to find out how much this pumpkin weighs because I don't want to overfeed her. We're going away for a week or so, and the last thing I want is to create a problem by overfeeding. So I want to weigh the pumpkin, then I'm going to fluff the bin and give a rough estimate of how many worms are in there, and that'll determine how much pumpkin I give. All right, so first I have to weigh the pumpkin. So that's just over 1.5 pounds for the pumpkin. So that's about 0.7 of a kilogram. So now I know that I'm gonna go fluff Cinderella and see how many worms I can find. All right, so you see that Cinderella has Landon's haircut waiting to eat. And so let me just take off the bubble wrap and the top paper and we'll see how this bin is doing. Cinderella is working her way through the lace on my t-shirt. The rest of the t-shirt was 100% cotton. And so at the end of it, she'll just have a lovely piece of lace, which is nice. All right, so what I'll do is I'll just start fluffing at this end. I think this end over here is where I fed. So let me just take a look. Oh, the moisture is really good. Now, pumpkin, it, as you know, is very moist. In fact, it's like 90% moisture. And so, you know, when a bin right off the start here is telling me it's nice and moist, you know, I have to think, do I want to put pumpkin in it? Because, you know, again, I'm going away. I don't want to come back to a puddle. So I will evaluate once I get into this end that I can see some shredded cardboard. I will evaluate how I feel the bin will do with the addition of excess moisture. You can see that the rose stems that I've been feeding Cinderella are still hanging around. So there's still some stems in here. But that's okay. That's really long food. And, you know, the worms, you know, in the absence of anything else to eat, they get into them. So have no clue what that is. So lots of mysteries in Cinderella because of the diversity of her diet. This was a game I was playing with my granddaughter, and she cut up these strips of paper. And so I don't know why they've turned pink. They must have picked up something from one of the berry Kleenexes or something I put in here. So yeah, these needles and sticks and stems, it makes it difficult to fluff a bin, but that's always been the nature of Cinderella, so I'm used to it. Cinderella's had some things like this Starbucks cup liner right from the beginning, this newspaper and whatnot. I'm surprised it's still hanging around. That's more Starbucks cup liner. But yeah, there's newspaper hanging around here and stems, but really, really good, healthy moisture. So, you know, a bit of clumping here in the bedding, but of course, the worms don't mind the clumping. They're in there. It's potentially, I guess, an anaerobic situation. If you had a lot of clumps, especially if they were harboring high nitrogen liquids, you could get some fermenting, some anaerobic fermenting going on. But, you know, for my purposes, if the bin is healthy, I'm not worried about clumps except for the inconvenience of fluffing. Okay, so this bin, you can see actually it's actually pretty heavy in the carbon in this end. You know, all these bits of newspaper that are still in here, and you can see all the shredded cardboard. So there's a, you know, this bin, I would say, has a lot of carbon in it. And I haven't even got into the end where I can see the most recent feeding and the most recent addition of shredded cardboard. So let's just take a look here and now just push the material to the other side. Cinderella has always eaten both mine and Landon's haircuts. So the worms have no problem chowing down through anything that I've ever thrown at her, the shrimp shells, the haircuts, the tops from vitamin bottles, the cotton. You know, she's always managed to get through it, the bouquets. And today, as maybe a semi-reward, she's going to get a pumpkin. But yeah, you can see the worms are more in this end where I fed the most recent food scraps. So I'm just trying to loosen up some of these paper clumps and assess the moisture level to see whether it is too moist to put a significant chunk of pumpkin in here. All right, let's turn over this feeding zone. Let's see what we've got. It's pretty dense. I'm pulling hard. Oops, sorry, see, wiggled. Pulling hard to get the carbon or the cardboard up off the bottom. There it comes. Probably got more rose stems down this end. I usually try to put the feeding on top of some of the challenging, more long-term material. Yeah, and I'm right. There's some rose stems. Lots of shredded cardboard in here. The worms are difficult to see, partly because they are so dark. They're a deep red with just that little yellow on the tail there. Cinderella gets lots of natural materials, so her worms are pretty much the color of this bedding. And I don't know about you, but I'm having a hard time seeing how many there are in here. Oh, and there's my road trip knife and fork. We're going on another road trip, so I may very well be bringing more cutlery home. And if it can't be reused, for whatever reason, I put it into Cinderella. Okay, so just one more corner and then a bit on the floor to turn over. And as I suspected, as I've gotten into this end, I'm seeing more shredded cardboard, and it is not harboring the moisture as much as the shredded cardboard in the other end. So I actually am feeling confident that the pumpkin, especially if I don't put in a whole pumpkin, will not overwhelm this bin. I also don't want to come home to a house full of fungus gnats. This is a really bad paper clump. I don't want to damage any wisps or anything that might be hiding out in it, so I'm just going to leave the paper clump alone. Okay, so this bottom here, you can see that the worms are down here enjoying some moisture, and you can probably see that it is actually a little bit more moist than the top shred was. So by pulling this out and putting it on the top, I am mixing it up. But other than, you know, the rose stems and the odd avocado pit, and this one already has a hole in it, so it's being gutted. So it's done. No food left in that. So other than the rose stems and the carbon, there's really no food left in this bin. So I've assessed the worm population. Certainly I can't give you, is it a pound of worms? Is it 2 pounds of worms? I would estimate it's probably close to a pound, just given, the times that I've harvested Cinderella, there's lots of worms crawling in here. It's just like I said, they're a bit camouflaged and spread out because they're hungry. Worms don't gather anymore once they've depleted the food. So I've pulled out some of this bottom material that's a little bit drier, and I think that's where I'm going to feed the pumpkin. So I'm going to give her Landon's haircut. it's shorter, and spread it out. When I give hair in a worm bin, I don't put it all in one spot. I spread it out a little bit. So I'm going to feed Cinderella half a pound of the pumpkin. I'm not going to feed her the full pound. So here we go. There's the inside of the pumpkin. It's going to go face down right there. So I thought I'd give Cinderella's worms something, a little pumpkin playground, poke some holes. This pumpkin is from Halloween, and it's now the end of February. So it has stayed in our house. It's actually not been even outdoors in the cooler temperatures. It's been in our house, and we've been going through a decluttering phase. And so I went, I'm going to freeze this pumpkin and feed it to Cinderella. So it has been frozen and then thawed in the fridge for about a week. So it's good to go. Now I just want to put on some grit. That is a combination of pulverized eggshells and some glacial rock dust. I'll put a link to the glacial rock dust in the description. I decided to become an Amazon affiliate, and so I'll get a tiny bit of any sales if you do decide to buy it at no cost to you, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so I've got carbon to soak up, hopefully, the moisture coming from the pumpkin. I've got grit. So now all we need to do is to let Cinderella's worms have her pumpkin. So check back. I will be watching them. I will be checking on my worms the minute I get home and seeing what they've done with this pumpkin. And so watch for an update on that in just over a week. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching Cinderella. See what she does with her pumpkin. Bye for now.